vote again. So here's the story.
The U.S. Court of Appeals has ordered this Mississippi Secretary of State to stop enforcing a lifetime voting ban for people with disqualifying felony convictions who've completed their sentences. Two judges on the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel ordered the Mississippi Secretary of State to stop enforcing the law that was established back in 1890. According to the judges, the law disenfranchises people convicted of specific crimes, including murder, forgery, and bigamy. Lawmakers say the decision to overturn this old law will restore voting rights to tens of thousands of Mississippians.
You had a lot of groups that would go out and try to get everyone's voting rights restored. We would go through the process of finding out if they were released and paid their debt to society, and then petition the committee on the House side as well as on the Senate side to take it to a vote in order to have these individuals' voting rights restored. And it was burdensome to them, and it is, because we've only done, since I've been in the legislature the last 8 years, we've only restored the voting rights to maybe 2 or 3 people.
Well, the lawsuit filed in 2018 by the Southern Poverty Law Center claimed Mississippi's lifetime voting bans arbitrarily grant or deprive citizens who live here of the right to vote and was intended to discriminate on the basis of race. The decision to overturn the law comes days ahead of the primary election.
The argument that they used to overturn this was cruel and unusual punishment. And what they're saying was that it was more of the unusual part of it. More or less the cruel, but they more or less focus on the unusual. What they was basing it off of is that you're double punishing someone for whatever the crime is. And the funny thing about it is the felonies that they was talking about, it isn't all felonies. It was certain felonies.
Okay.
You're found guilty of this certain felony and this certain felony. So it wasn't all felons. So
which allows them to target certain groups a little bit better.
So it allows you to target certain people.
Bigamy.
So when they were saying that, and if you're not discussing that this dude was in office for 8 years and only 2 or 3 people got the ability to get their rights back to vote, I don't know how.
Don't look at Alabama and Florida, then you'll be really upset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm still looking at y'all.
I mean, it's Mississippi. It's Mississippi.
Well, that's the funny thing about it is it is Mississippi. I mean,
yeah, but you know what I'm saying? I'm saying, like, Mississippi was like the last state to give up its slaves. Okay, Mississippi is an interesting place. Okay,
that was my point.
Here's my thing, though. We're still looking at the judiciary to write laws effectively, right? So you got a judge saying, stop enforcing this particular law. That's actually the executive branch's prerogative, right? The executive branch decides what they enforce and don't enforce. The judiciary interprets the law according to whatever level constitution, whether it be state or federal. So this judge can render the law to be unconstitutional for the state of Mississippi, but it's still the executive branch that has to decide to stop enforcing. So in a way, what we're dealing with here is and this is happening on every level. The judiciary is being called on to operate on levels that they weren't designed to operate on. And we should have a problem with that. Yes, right now we're seeing some decisions that benefit us because the Senate's, the legislative branches, state and federal, and the governor and presidencies and the executive branches, they've just been horrible. But just like the judiciary can make a decision you agree with, they can make decisions that you don't agree with. It's not their role. And it's like, how far has our country slid to where they're the last line of defense? They're the last ones kind of doing a job. That's scary to me. To me, that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
It. I didn't know Mississippi. First of all, I'm sorry, I just can't get it out of my head. It's Mississippi. I mean, we don't have
But we
many.
can't.
We don't have many, but you got to admit how bad this country is when we still know what Mississippi is going to do, Alabama going to do, Louisiana going to do, Kentucky going to do, Texas is going to do, Florida is going to do, Arkansas is going to do. You are in your own freaking category of effery.
Yeah. The bigotry and the identity Olympics or whatever you want to call it is so thick in the old South that we already know of the like 8 states off top that just be like, well, what do you expect? And that says a lot about the country. With all the demographic shifting, with people moving, with industry and all of that, there are still 5 to 8 states that you just know what to expect. Because they intentionally keep big industry out so they can maintain these old school control. And then the ones like Florida who just completely rewrite, they just flip the script altogether. And they move, a lot of bigots move there. And then they overpower the state. Because it's not like the homegrowns that are really that bad in Florida. It's all the old people who moved to Florida. And then they created a whole ecosystem that brought more people like them, their thought process to Florida. So Florida flipped. Texas would flip, but they keep immigrants from getting the ability to vote. They do these things with the voter disenfranchisement that you just brought up about Mississippi. You know, it's personally, I say, unless part of your sentence is a suspension of your citizenship, you should still retain the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're in there for killing 50 people. Until they pull the switch on your chair, you should still be able to vote in these elections. Because as quiet as it's kept, these states, the inmates still count. They're still residents of the state because the state now owns them to an extent. They are residents of the state. So these counties where these jails are put in get the benefit of having more numbers so they can get more representation. They can get more resources from the federal government. They can do all of these things, but the people who are giving you these numbers don't have their voting rights, their citizenship rights. It's convict leasing and slavery kind of rolled right on in there together, which is why to this day, the 13th Amendment has that exception clause sitting loud as hell and no one's trying to get rid of it. Because if they tried to get rid of it, it would mess with the prison system, it would mess with the legal system, and that messes with money.
But I tell you, the most powerful thing in this country is money, economics.
But
it's all in pursuit of power.
Right.
Yes.